Welcome to the Westminster Effects Doxology Podcast. We exist for the glory of God and the tone of his people. I'm Cody Fields. Go buy stuff for your guitar at westminstereffects.com. Join the discussion in the Westminster Effects Green Room on Facebook, and make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on all the socials and all that nonsense. I'm not joined by the Right Reverend Bradley Cox today, nor Lutheran John, the Augsburg Admiral from Lincoln, Nebraska, but I am joined by the dynamic duo of Dominion Wealth Strategists, Justin Johnson and Josiah Stowe. Guys, welcome to the podcast. And Justin, in your case, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah. It's been October, I think, right? When we were at the Fight Laugh Feast conference.
Yeah, and that was the first time I met you guys and got to
at least in person.
Yeah, exactly. We've been acquainted online for some time, especially with your certified meme lordery with Dominion, which is just fantastic. For the people who aren't familiar, real quick, give us the spiel about Dominion Wealth Strategists.
Sure thing. Yeah. I suppose. Yeah, Justin, you take that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Since my brainchild.
No, you.
So Dominion Wealth Strategists is the only distinctly reformed financial consulting firm on the planet. At least if there was another one, you would have figured they would have been at one of the conferences that we've been to by now, and we would have been able to shake hands or something. So as far as I can tell, the only Calvinistic covenantal confessional cash management firm there. So we do everything from budgeting to estate planning. We help with life insurance, debt management, savings plans, kind of the whole nine yards there, with our tagline being all of Christ for all of life and all of finance for Christendom.
Love it.
And if we don't do something directly in-house, we do basically have an exhaustive referral network. So we can take care of everything, or we can get you in contact with the people who do have those licenses necessary to take care of it for you. So like wholesaling gold, health insurance, investments, we all know someone who we could refer you out to get that taken care of.
Good stuff. It's always good to, as my friend Corey Truax on his podcast says, it's good to know a guy, and particularly to know a guy within the faith, and even more so if all of your ideals line up, right? Like Reformed. Are y'all post-mill, or are y'all split on that? I don't remember. Okay, so
Josiah's post-mill.
So
I'm
wrong.
I'm from Dispy land. Originally, I'm very much Reformed these days, but I am so burnt out on anything end times discussion, eschatology.
I don't hold that against you in the slightest.
I basically just turn my nose at it in a not. I just don't want to deal with it. I want to go there, and so I'm open to a-mill, post-mill, but I'm incredibly burned out on the topic. I don't see that changing at any point in time, so I just don't give it my energy.
Well, plot twist, we're actually exegeting Daniel 2 today. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, actually, I just went through Isaiah with a friend recently. We're still working through it. And a lot of Isaiah comes up. There are parts that come off post-mill, and there are parts that do come off kind of a-mill, depending on how you read it. And so it's actually been a very interesting discussion. And I still am going to come through Isaiah probably just as uncommitted as I started.
Well, it'll all pan out in the end, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, to me, it's just it's a secondary topic, and I view the exercise the Dominion mandate, and I take it very seriously. And I don't think that necessarily has to tie in a whole lot to your eschatology necessarily, although I understand the synergy between the two for some people. To me, it's just kind of yep, it's there, but the command's still in Genesis. So
yeah, exactly. So
speaking of end times,
we're in the economic
See,
end times.
that's a Dispy transition right there.
Right. So now that Trump has hosted Netanyahu in the Oval Office, we're going to expect a 7-year covenant between the United States and Israel, during which time Trump will reveal himself as the Antichrist. No, but this episode was your idea, but it's pertinent to me being a small business owner, who imports literally every part, because electronics parts are not built in the United States, period. So Donald Trump and his tariff regime kind of hitting a sour note for me. So, fellas, what do we think about tariffs?
Well, I want to say too, as I preface this, Josiah and I are involved in other ventures that are being hit just as hard as yours. So Dominion isn't the only thing we do. The tariffs that hit earlier this year already were very painful.
Yeah.
And so we're similarly quite affected in some of our ventures for sure. I think that, so Josiah obviously wrote an article on DominionWealthStrategists.com, where you go to reform.money, see the blog there. It's a very thoughtful approach to tariffs, generally, not in favor, but I want to do my best to make sure that we bring as much nuance to both sides as possible. Yeah. And I will say this in either case, and I want to, as we talk about this, I think it's good to separate a couple concepts. One being the political misrepresentations on both sides of what's going on, including of Trump. That chart that he produced in his press conference,
total lies.
It's junk. Like there's nothing. It's a complete misrepresentation. He should have never done that ever under any circumstances.
At least we got the herd in McDonald Islands to pay their fair share, right? All those penguins.
Well, no, I will say this. Some of those like Antarctica, that is because like there are some countries that are using those smaller countries as tax shelters because they're saying they're exporting from them and that sort of thing. So like the whole like taxing penguins thing, it's like, okay, that's kind of another misrepresentation from the other side where it's like, look, it's being used as a tax shelter. It's okay. No penguins are harmed in the making of these tariffs. They don't import anything.
Right.
It's fish. So I mean they're all right there. Right. So I just want to just bring out that there's been a lot of extreme things said on both sides, including, like I said, by Trump himself, which are total misrepresentations. That chart was basically a goofy equation they came up with that sort of conflates the trade deficits and the tariffs, and also weights it against proposed pass through changes in price to the average American citizen. And that factor, by the way, was very underweighted. Very, very underweighted. In fact, there's study to demonstrate that the figure they used 25%. Is probably the very bottom of the scenario in specific cases, but generally going to be far higher pass through for the average person. So Trump misrepresented himself and others are misrepresenting Trump in this whole thing. And so we want to as we examine this, look at tariffs, look at these tariffs, what are tariffs actually doing? And I hope we can separate that from the political statements on both sides, because I just view the messaging on both sides as being equally stupid. Again, and from Trump and his administration himself because he's basically lying, and the argument might be able to be made that he doesn't really know. He just had his team do it or whatever. Well, guess what? If you're an executive leadership, you're accountable for the actions of your subordinates. Yeah. So yeah, maybe he didn't know, but either way, I hold him responsible for those misrepresentations. And so that aside, here's just a few factors that I look at. One, I think taxes are stupid. And the taxes are, and I believe that in America we're highly overtaxed. I realize we pay less taxes than many other developed countries. I don't care what other countries do. So in the United States, constitutional law forbids a lot of the taxes that we have. And interestingly enough, one of the taxes that is permitted by the Constitution are tariffs. Now, that doesn't necessarily make tariffs moral and right. Right. But it does mean that they're actually one of the very few legitimate legal, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's moral, but legal means for the United States to derive an income. And I think that the idea with this was the founding fathers' interest in keeping us away from foreign entanglement. And a way to do that is you penalize imports. It can be an effective way to avoid foreign entanglement. Now,
it's entirely possible to have good reasoning and end up with the wrong conclusion. like not wanting foreign entanglements, which is we're all over the place with that now. Like you want to have good, sane foreign policy, but then you end up actually screwing your own people.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why we pay twice the price for sugar that literally everybody else does, because we have such high sugar tariffs.
Right. Yeah. Because the American people are the ones who actually pay the tariffs. It's not like we're going to China and extracting value out of their coffers. We're just making it less. We're decreasing the incentive for them to ship products over here, because there's now it's no longer a cheaper product, essentially. So Americans are economically incentivized against buying the now more expensive thing from the foreign country. So it's hurting them in so much as they can't sell as much, but the actual cost is coming from the American people.
Yep.
Well, and one factor too here is a lot of these goods are, and a bunch of them are things that obviously like people don't really need. Like we overspend on certain electronics, not guitar pedals, of course.
Of course.
But like, does everyone need a new phone every year? Does everyone need to buy, the latest gaming console? Like, I'm not real sympathetic to those things being hit, but what concerns me more is like sugar or like goods that we need that we don't produce enough of domestically. Like disposable goods. How much of our toilet paper is imported? How much of our paper is imported? All of those things, pens and pencils and whatever else, doors and windows, the siding on your house, all those types of things. A lot of that is imported. Yep. And that you can't go without these things. I
just replaced the lights in 4 of our rooms a couple months ago with Amazon ceiling fans.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the ring light design with the fan in the middle.
Yeah.
And I paid like $80 for each of them. If I go to Lowe's and get it from an American company, it's at least $150 or $160. So I'm at least going to start thinking, all right, do I really need one in this room? Or can I just go ahead and make our lives better with this thing, right? And same thing with a couple other light fixtures where I was able to get them from Amazon for half of what I would get it from Lowe's or Home Depot. And it's like, well, it's literally just LEDs in an enclosure. I'm going to go do the thing that's the same thing for cheaper, so then I have more money to do other things with, whether it's giving to our local church or buying more groceries or buying more pedals. I can write that off as a tax expense, though. That's not coming out of the personal account these days.
That's all pre-tax.
Right.
I think that's it does change consumer behavior a lot. And I think that we should promote domestic production as much as reasonably possible. I think that we should I would like to see more manufacturing in the United States and for us to compete in that sphere more. But doing so with tariffs instead of a carrot, it's a stick. And there are ways to reform tax code and other things like that to encourage those types of more beneficial behaviors, like more domestic production. And one thing I think is worth bringing out is these tariffs are on goods. And so when the Trump administration represents that we're at a net deficit in trade with a given country, that is true when it pertains to goods. But it doesn't factor services. The United States is a net exporter of services, not goods. We're a consumer of goods. We're an exporter of services.
Yeah.
And I would be curious to see those numbers compared, because I don't know how many services we render to people and businesses in China, but I do know that in general, that's sort of how our economy works. And the Trump administration is not representing that in their figures for sure. And neither are people that are necessarily defending him. And I will say this too, by the way, personally, I'm actually fine with the tariffs right now if we're playing chicken, because I'm okay with playing chicken for a minute. I hope that that's all that this is. But if it lasts long, then there will be consequences that we're due for a recession, probably, and this will probably be the thing that kicks it off if they remain in place. And it might make the recession a little more drastic than it might have otherwise been.
Here's my issue with the playing chicken, using it as a negotiating tactic is they're effectively saying if there's a father down the street who is punching his kids in the face every single day, you're saying, until you stop punching your kids in the face every single day, I'm going to punch my own kids in the face every single day. See how you like that? Like, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's also, it doesn't seem to be in good faith as a negotiating tactic, because you're saying, I will tax my own people until you stop taxing your own people so we can make more money off of you. It doesn't seem to be a very honorable way to negotiate any kind of agreement.
No. And I'd say tariffs by nature are not biblical economic tools. We don't see any biblical king, actually anyone in Scripture, institute a tariff, period. And the only thing even relatively similar to a tariff was the suzerain vassal relationship that a lot of these states had with these empires, where you pay me tribute so that I don't invade you, right? So we're going to basically tax your entire nation just to exist, and you do get the occasional toll rolled in there, right? But generally, economic activity was freely done. In fact, borders weren't even checked all that often. So you come through the border, fine, to sell your goods in my city, that's great. And because of the way you look and the way your clothes are wearing, I know that you're an Egyptian coming into Israel to sell your goods. Right? And then you let the free market decide whether people want to buy Egyptian goods. So it was a far freer economic society, at least in this regard. And now we have relatively closed borders, economically speaking. And if you want to bring stuff in, now we need to know point of origin, not just what it is.
Right.
And then we're going to add a tax on top of that so that there's less economic incentive for the people here at home to buy it. So again, there's no biblical justification for tariffs whatsoever. I think it is a distinct mark against our nation that we've decided that it's okay to utilize them. But to note on a conversation that Justin and I had last night, the cat's out of the bag. Tariffs exist now. You can't pretend like they don't, and like other nations aren't using this less than ideal economic tool to hit us. And so it's only right, I think, to if we're going to, I don't agree with the formula they're using to do these reciprocal tariffs, but
they're not reciprocal.
No, but like, hey, if you've got a big stick and you're hitting us in the face with it, kind of, again, we're to reverse that. So we're going to hold the same size stick, hypothetically. And then if you put your stick down, I'll put my stick down. And ideally, everyone puts their sticks down.
Right.
Everyone gets proper economic trade, no tariffs at all, and we go back to an older system.
At least in that line of thinking, it's the same line of thought as concealed carry pistols.
Right.
If everybody's armed, then we're not going to just start shooting each other. It's when nobody's armed is when everybody gets shot.
Right. Yeah. So ideally, we're moving into a society of freer trade, and we're just like effectively the way I see it as America is saying, hey, guys, tariffs suck. You want to see why? This is why. And hopefully everyone's like, oh, yeah, tariffs do kind of suck. Sorry about that. And everybody drops it.
So I am hopeful.
That would be the hope.
Right? Yeah. Here's what gives me pause with that, though. I was actually just sent this by one of our friends at church. Shout out to Zach Walkton, also plays drums in our band at church and in my band. But he sent me where White House trade advisor Peter Navarro criticized. Did you say gross?
I did.
Yeah, verily, as the Puritans would say. So here in the upstate of South Carolina, we have the main BMW North American plant. It came in about 35 years ago, and it has completely revolutionized this area. Whether it's people directly working for BMW or tangential support for BMW supplying parts or whatever. But he said the business model where BMW and Mercedes come into Spartanburg, South Carolina and have us assemble German engines and Austrian transmissions doesn't work for America. It's bad for our economics. It's bad for our national security. We want them to come here. They did come here. And it's been really, really lucrative for this area. To the tune of, what is it? Something like $26 billion a year or something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about, dude? Literally just because the origin of a certain part in a certain vehicle didn't originate from 10 miles down the road is a bad thing. I'm sorry. I thought in Christ we were all one new man, right? Like this is basically repaganizing the world. Obviously not saying everyone is in the new.
I was going to say, I don't know about fellowship with the Germans. That's went a little too far.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear
not that there's a really strong nationalist movement in certain supposedly Christian circles or anything.
No, never.
No. Super
So I think
isolationist and all
that, I mean, I'll say that very strongly. I prefer America first because it's my people. You know, like that's
absolutely.
I believe in that. And I would like to see those transmissions and engines produced here. That'd be great. But until we do so in a way that's like the best and it's the most competitive, why do we what do you expect to hand out here? You expect so the funny thing is a lot of people, some of the people talking like that are on the right. It seems like a lot of people, and the right generally would say America first and that sort of thing. But they'd also be they would resonate with the message of you shouldn't have entitlements, right? You should earn what you get. Well, if you want to earn domestic production of a motor and a transmission, then you should get really good at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's where the opportunity lies, but it doesn't lie in tariffing someone so hard that that forces production to necessarily be here. Why not just help make it more productive here? Help make it more competitive here. That's that's what free markets are and do. And again, there are ways to incentivize domestic production, tax via tax code and other things like that. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing the stick and not the carrot. And kind of along the lines of what you guys said, I completely agree about, it kind of being like it's a weapon. And once it's out, everyone sort of has to at least carry that stick. And again, it would be great if, like I said earlier, if it's just playing chicken and it goes away, or at least reduces after playing chicken for a little bit, kind of like what happened with Canada. But if it remains, both sides, every side's going to end up, being harmed. The Chinese economy is already in a tighter spot than the United States economy. Yeah. And it's just going to make it harder for them, harder for us. And in the end, no one's going to particularly win, except for, honestly, as usual, either way, a handful of people at the top will make a lot of money because they are aware of what's happening. And there's claims that Trump sold a lot of stock last week before everything went into place. But at the same time,
Marjorie Taylor Greene did.
Yeah, but at the same time, so did a lot of other people.
Yep.
Because this was a somewhat predictable response to circumstances. It's not like he put the tariffs in secret. Everybody knew it was going to happen. And everyone should also that's panicking, just be calm. It's okay. This happens. The markets will go back. And why is this? Because American businesses are good at making money and they'll continue making money. And as long as they make money, everything will be okay in the markets.
Yeah. The underlying assets that those stocks represent has not changed in intrinsic value. They're still the same things.
Yeah.
It's just people don't want to buy them as often. So there's less demand because everything's in chaos right now, which means price goes down. Supply and demand. Easy stuff. Once demand goes back up, price will go back up, back to normal. Just one of the levers that people forget exists in normal economies.
So here's one of the things I appreciate about this conversation is it sounds Josiah is closer to a rigid general equity theonomy position, which is what I would also advocate. Yeah. And Justin, you're advocating like best case general equity theonomy, no tariffs, but kind of a realpolitik. At the moment, right? These things exist. We have to deal with the world as it is. That's true. Yeah. We haven't anathematized each other yet.
Report to your elders for discipline.
Right. Like we can and should be able to have these conversations, state things dispassionately, disagree on, because we're having marginal disagreements ultimately in this conversation. But the ultimate advocacy in terms of economics is for freer economic activity, not for more restricted. That's where the hardcore Trump supporters are missing it in my mind, is they're saying they're effectively advocating for a central centrally planned economy,
Yeah.
which you're 2 steps away from full-blown Marxism, Leninism at that point. What are we doing, guys?
All we have to do is take control of the railways, and that'll be it.
And we have always been at war with East Asia.
Yeah, I think that just for me, there's, I do hope that it goes away, but there's also realities of like, guess what? Like, I would prefer us to not feel like we have to carry guns in public, but we do because we feel like we have to, and there's good reason for that, and there's good evidence for that being a good practice. Just like there's like would I love for all of the nukes in the world to be dismantled? Yes, I would totally love that. That seems like that would be good. But guess what? You can't trust everybody to do it all at once, because then you end up with only 1 or 2 people having nukes, and that's pretty bad. So it's a reality of I view this as a messy reality of a fallen world. Kind of like when Jesus said to the Pharisees, like, you guys were given divorce because of the hardness of your heart. So I made it, God made it sort of permissible, but God still hates it. So like, please don't do that anyway. Like it's sort of like this is a reality of a fallen world. It's one of those things that it's not necessarily sinful, although it could be used sinfully, and in a perfect world wouldn't exist in any way whatsoever.
That's fair. Okay, so let's maybe address some of the main arguments coming from the Trump administration in regards to why they've implemented these tariffs. I think the first one that we keep hearing is we've been ripped off for X amount of years. What say you? I see Josiah just about having an aneurysm.
Chomping at the bit here. Yeah, America's been ripped off. Hardly. We've been the biggest sort of we've been the biggest guy on almost every single battlefield for the last 60, 70 years. Well, actually about 120 years if you want to get technical.
In before the glowing eyes on X say, sounds like the post-war consensus to me.
No, but America's been like the biggest, it's been carrying the biggest stick by far.
I mean, Russia won World War II, so.
That's fair. And then collapsed under the weight of their own nonsense after a bit. But socialism did work like really well for them for a long time. Like it was not a up in the air, or it
especially
was
once they
up in
offed
the
all
air
those
as far
kulaks,
as,
right?
Right. Yeah. Besides the gulags, but like it functioned for a long time. But I digress. So America's been like the biggest economic powerhouse by far, with the only other real contender being the USSR. And even then, it wasn't much of a contest. We out-nuked them hard. Right. So with us being ripped off by the rest of the world, no, we just transitioned from a country of production where we actually made meaningful, valuable things into a country of management where we outsourced all of our labor to countries that could do it cheaper. And then we all got into air-conditioned corner offices and forgot how to make stuff. And then we're surprised when the actual wealth ended up dissolving out into the world, especially as those systems of production became more and more efficient and we needed less and less people in management in order to make them happen. So we basically just outsourced our main way to create wealth, and then stopped creating wealth. And now between the national debt, corporate debt, and personal debt, it's a country that's been pretending like it has wealth for a long time, and it hasn't. And now it's finally just catching up with us, as we're going to have to start defaulting if we don't change things.
Yeah.
So no, we're not ripped off. We ripped ourselves off 50 years ago, and now we're just finally coming to terms with the reality of it.
Well, one of the things I've been saying is all trade is fair trade because all trade is voluntary. You have to agree to those prices and those conditions and all that kind of stuff. If you don't want an iPhone, get an iPhone. That's what Androids are for. Or dumb phones for all I care. You can have a landline. But also, particularly with the EU, so I have distribution through Warwick in Germany to Central and Eastern Europe. And the deal that I have with all of my distributors is, you have this rate, like this discount off of the minimum advertised price in the US. And then you pay for shipping, you pay the import tax because that's how it works. It's an import tax, right? So they're paying that tax. In the European Union, minimum advertised pricing is illegal. So I can't tell a dealer you have to sell it at this price or higher, where I can in the US. So Warwick in their distribution has me in Thomann. They're basically Germany's Sweetwater. And Thomann is selling a couple of my pedals for below American minimum advertised pricing because they can afford it, because their profit margins are still there. So they totally got ripped off on those import taxes, right? Like they totally ripped me off. Like, what are we talking about? Like apparently they got such a good deal that they can sell it cheaper in Europe than I allow my dealers here to sell it.
Yeah, I think that speaks to how this is sort of a nuanced topic that generalizations don't really fit a lot of the time. Like there are some times where there are cases where we're kind of like getting the raw end of the deal. Yeah. But what's the net in the end? That's really tough to say, like, honestly, but I do think that in either case, the more free trade we have, the better.
Yes.
Like there's no evidence to support that tariffs on both sides help market conditions or help the consumer in any meaningful way.
Absolutely.
I've never seen evidence to support that.
In fact, they literally, the only way money can funnel because of a tariff is to the governments.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not helping the consumer at all. It's literally hurting them in a very specific way so that they stop doing a thing that you don't want them to do.
That's a great point. Here's the next argument that I hear is these tariffs are going to make America rich.
How?
I mean, I just don't see how that's really going to happen when we already don't. I mean, like, it's like, yeah, we import a lot from China, but there's probably going to be a little bit less now if these tariffs stay in place. So will the net income derived from tariffs go up?
Right.
Maybe not, because the whole danger and fear is that there's going to be less imports. That's sort of the point, right? More domestic production.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to come from tariffs. Now, domestic production could be good, I suppose. But like, to be really clear, it takes years and years, like, to bring a bunch of, like, if we wanted to build more cars in America again, most of what we have are assembly plants, because we still do services. We just don't do many goods.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all these assembly plants. We don't make a bunch of motors in the United States. We don't make a bunch of transmissions. We don't make the circuit boards that are in cars. And how many circuit boards are in a brand new car these days? There's
Lots.
like
Too many.
a lot of them. Like all these systems in cars have like the headlights have their own, system. Like it's not just wires and switches like it used to be. So like, we're not going to just produce all of that domestically here next year. You can't do that. It takes a long time for those resources to be spun up. And so like, it's not going to just be this thing where, oh, well, we used to do it there and now we do it here, so it's no big deal. No, that's like 20 years of development to really put a big dent in that. These factories take time to build. The processes being put into place is a big deal. The capital investment, who has the money for that, by the way? Oh, and if we go into a recession, banks are real stingy about lending. So like business lending is not going to happen as much.
Especially when you start talking about the scale, the absolute unimaginable scale that a lot of this ends up being. Like me being a 1.5 man shop, if I want to produce a new pedal, probably about 3-4 months. 2 if I really hustle. Right. Yeah. Like if I go out and say I need a circuit board layout by the end of this week, I can have it prototyped by within 2 weeks, get the artwork done, blah, blah, blah. And I can actually be producing in a couple of months if I crush it. Yeah. But when you're talking about semiconductors, when you're talking about entire engines for Ford, or Hyundai or Toyota, like any of these companies, that's an enormous scale, and it doesn't happen overnight.
No. And part of this too, like, so I used to live in Michigan, where obviously manufacturing took a hit. In case anyone didn't know, so really? They do produce some components in the United States. They're the high end performance components, like the stuff for like they're more the sports cars and things like that. There were still a couple machine shops doing that in Detroit and other places, and they did that because they tried outsourcing and it didn't work because they couldn't produce product to the specifications that were required for the application. Right. Guess what, America? We should have more of that if we want to be competitive. We should be the leader in innovation and in precision and that kind of thing. We shouldn't be competing for the bottom of manufacturing.
Yep.
Like I think it's cool to have it here if we can. I think that would be beneficial and in general. But if we're going to be like to rush in and say this is what we want to do, probably shouldn't be competing for like who's stamping car doors.
They're effectively competing for an economic participation trophy, and I thought Trump was against that.
Right.
You would think, right?
You would think. You would think.
Right. And
so and part of that is you're talking about it's kind of goes back to entitlements. Like people feel like they're entitled to a competitive advantage from the government, and that's not the way free markets work.
No, it's not the way the
free markets should work like, hey, I have a thing. Does anybody want to buy it? You can willingly do so if you find my offer compelling. That's what a competitive market is.
Yep.
A competitive market is not, hey, if you buy my thing, this big guy behind me, if he might hit you if you don't buy it. But it's totally up to you.
If you want to buy it from this other guy, we're going to tack on. You have to pay us an extra 15 cents. So that they're actually the same price, even though he's selling it cheaper.
Or we'll confiscate your goods.
Right. And the beautiful thing about competition, like from a Christian perspective, it's not, I have this piece of the pie, which means that guy can't, right? God grows that pie. And being in an oversaturated market, if we're being honest, in the guitar pedal world, because the barrier for entry is so low.
Yeah.
There is a lot of competition, but particularly with the Christian pedal builders that I know, when somebody wins, you know who celebrates? Everybody else. Everybody celebrates that win. Hey, you just came out with this new product and somebody bought yours over mine. Good for you, dude. Like that makes me work a little bit harder and develop something even cooler. And then he celebrates that when I get that win. And so we have to get out of this mindset of zero-sum thinking of I have, which means you can't, or you have that, which means I can't have it. That's just the sin of envy, if we're being honest.
Yeah. It's Marxism, and we're supposed to be capitalist.
Yep.
So why are we using Marxist ideals to determine reciprocal tariffs? Doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. So, fellas, we're running up against our time limit that we had set. What are some final takeaways, and where can people find you?
Yeah, at least on tariffs, I'll start there. And Justin, if you want to tell where they can find us. On tariffs, everything's going to get about 10% more expensive. We're going to have a big inflation hit almost necessarily because of some decisions that some people in Washington decided to make. And that's going to hurt. Ideally, it's playing chicken. A lot of things happen after the switching cost, and America ends up at least net wealthier long-term, but we can't know, right? So I'd say don't necessarily get hyper defensive in your finances, but do make sure you're stewarding everything as well as you can, because we're at least going into a rough patch, and a lot of Americans are not in a place where a rough patch is tenable, where they can really absorb that. Again, long-term, be hopeful, be post-mill. Great. But be prepared for the actual realities of the economic situations coming up in the relatively near future that might last 5-10 years. It's not going to be pretty, and you're going to be the one that has to bear the cost, not the government.
Yep.
Yeah. And as far as how to find us, especially if you're someone that's trying to navigate these waters and, figure out a future vision for your family and have a reformed perspective on your finances, you can come visit us at reformed.money. And we'd be happy to meet you, sit down with you, talk to you over a Zoom call, and see how we can help you.
Yeah. And for those at home, that's a website, not a app. So www.reform.money. We'll be happy to take a look at your finances, and we do so free of charge. So,
I take it that's been a point of confusion for some.
Reform.money. I'll find you on Twitter. Like, no, it's our website.
And that's Dominion Wealth Strategists for all your socials and all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So the best financial firm, or whatever you want to call it, wealth management firm, social media presence on the planet. The memes are unbeatable.
I try.
Thank you. That's Josiah, pretty much.
Yeah, spoken as a true millennial, right? Well, thanks, guys, for coming on and talking about this. I know it's a heavy situation for a lot of people. It's heavy for me. honestly. I'm tremendously concerned. I'm trying to figure out ways to get around some of these shenanigans. So thanks for coming on. We'll do it again sometime, absolutely, and talk economics, because we need more of that in Christendom, if we're being honest.
We do.
So
totally agree. Really appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. To everybody else, go love God, love your neighbor, make some music. We'll see you next time.